The unearthing. The dust of the dead world rose with every step the alien diggers took. The planet was long abandoned, with no rivers, no air, and no life. Only endless deserts of ash and stone. But still, the Galactic Archaeology Guild sent a team here because their sensors picked up something strange under the surface. Professor Kale, a tall insectoid with 6 glassy eyes, stood at the edge of the dig site, his mandibles twitching with excitement. He believed he would uncover ancient alien ruins, maybe even technology left behind by a lost race. But what they found was something far greater and far more terrifying. The drills cut through layer after layer of rock until the machines struck something solid. Not stone, not metal they knew, but something beyond recognition, smooth, black, and endless. The ground trembled as the drill heads broke, sparks flying uselessly against the strange wall beneath the planet's crust. At first, the workers thought it was just one structure, a buried dome perhaps, but as the scanners mapped the underground, the image spread across every holoscreen in the camp. The buried shape was not a city, not a mountain, but a ship. A starship so massive that it stretched across the whole planet. The alien crew froze as the realization hit them it was planet-sized. Whispers spread quickly. Ships of this scale were only myths, stories told in old council halls. The guild members argued, but one fact could not be denied. The structure was real, and it was ancient. Professor Kale's claws shook as he recorded his findings. "Not alien," he muttered, his voice breaking. The symbols carved faintly on the black surface matched records from the archives. They were human. The galaxy had always seen humans as reckless explorers, tough fighters, but never as great builders. They lived on their small blue world and their scattered colonies. No one believed they could create something that could swallow moons. And yet, here it was, proof that humanity had been hiding something unimaginable. The news leaked within hours, carried by smugglers and traders who overheard the panicked archaeologists. By the time the Galactic Council heard the report, entire sectors were already whispering. If humans had buried one ship of this size, how many more were hidden? And why were they buried in the first place? The Council sent its fastest fleet to confirm. Dozens of cruisers arrived above the dead world, their guns glowing, their leaders desperate for answers. But what they saw chilled them to the core. The planet itself seemed to pulse, as if it was alive. The scanners screamed warnings as the giant ship deep below stirred. Kale and his team ran as the ground shook. Cracks splitting open across the desert. Ash clouds rose into the sky. Lightning danced in the dust storms. And from the pit, a low vibration hummed across the surface. It was not mechanical noise. It was a heartbeat. "Run?" someone screamed. But none of them could move fast enough. The desert collapsed in great sheets. Machines, camps, and workers vanishing into the black abyss. The council ships in orbit fired beams into the cracks, trying to scan deeper, but the beams only bounced back, as if swallowed by some unseen shield. Then the first light came. A thin blue glow stretched across the cracks, tracing the outline of something far bigger than any mind could accept. Lines like veins spread over the surface, connecting into shapes, circles, and runes. The alien archaeologists stared in horror. The buried ship was not dead. It was waking. Professor Kale screamed into his recorder. "It is human. It carries human design. They hid it here thousands of years ago." But before he could finish, a shockwave burst from the ground, throwing him into the air. The fleet above was shaken too, ships rattling, systems shutting down one by one. Alarms rang across the bridge of every vessel. No one could explain it, but every captain felt the same thing. They were in the presence of something far greater than themselves. The hum grew into a roar, a sound that echoed not through the air but inside their minds. The council commanders argued. Some demanded retreat. Others demanded to destroy the world before the ship rose. But then one signal broke across every frequency. A single transmission carried through static, deep and heavy. It was not alien. Speech, not machine, but a human voice, cold, calm, and full of warning. "Do not interfere," it said. "Awakening in progress." The words froze the galaxy, on distant colonies, on council worlds. On every ship that heard the signal, beings shivered. Humanity, the species many mocked as reckless, had hidden planet-sized starships under dead worlds. And now, one of them was opening its eyes. Kale, bleeding and half buried in ash, looked. Up at the glowing cracks, he whispered the only thought left in his mind. If this is just one ship, how many more did they bury? The desert shook again, and the stars above seemed to dim. The galaxy would never be the same. The unearthing had begun. Asterisk first contact with the giants. The council fleet circled the dead world, their warships shining like silver teeth against the darkness. Every scanner pointed down at the cracked planet, every weapon locked and waiting. But despite their power, despite their numbers, no one dared to fire. The ground below still pulsed with blue veins of light, spreading wider each minute. The shape of the massive buried ship was now visible from orbit. It covered almost half the world's crust, like a beast sleeping under stone. Admiral Seraph, a reptilian commander with scales black as obsidian, stood on the bridge of the flagship, his claws tapped against the railing as he watched the monitors. He had seen many wars, crushed many rebellions, but nothing unsettled him more than this. This is no ruin, he whispered to his officers. This is a weapon. But before they could respond, a smaller shape entered the system. A single ship, human-built, old, scarred, nothing like the gleaming fleets of the council. It was just one human frigate, no larger than a patrol craft, yet it moved straight through the council blockade, its engines burning steady blue. Dozens of alien ships turned their weapons toward it, but none fired. The human ship opened a channel. On the holoscreen, a human officer appeared, his uniform plain, his hair graying, his eyes calm. He spoke without anger, without fear. "You will not approach the surface," he said. "This site is under human control." Laughter broke out across several council bridges. Admiral Seraph bared his teeth. "One frigate against my fleet? You dare block us?" He hissed, but the human only repeated his words. "You will not approach the surface." The council commanders thought it was a bluff. They sent a cruiser forward, its cannons glowing. The frigate did not move, did not turn. Then, without warning, a single pulse of light shot from the small ship. The cruiser vanished, not exploded, not broken vanished. One moment it was there, the next it was gone. Silence filled every channel. Admiral Seraph froze, his scaled hands shaking. That was impossible. No weapon of that size existed. Yet the tiny human frigate had erased a warship as if it were dust. The human officer spoke again, his voice like stone. "We are the guardians of what sleeps here. You will not interfere." Behind him on the screen, the cracks in the planet glowed brighter. The planet-sized ship below shifted again, mountains splitting apart as its hull began to rise. Panic spread through the council fleet. Some ships pulled back, others demanded orders. Seraph roared to hold position, but no one wanted to move closer. The frigate hovered alone, blocking every path, calm as a shadow. Then the strange hum returned, vibrating through every hull. The buried ship's surface opened slightly, a single eye of light, shining upward into the stars. The beam rushed across the council fleet. Every ship it touched went dark, their systems shutting down instantly, engines silenced, weapons cold, crews left floating in terror. Sarath's flagship was caught in the glow, lights flickering, alarms screaming. He shouted to his crew, but his words died in his throat. On the holoscreen, the human officer leaned closer, his eyes hard. "Leave now," he said, "or you will see what it means when the giants awaken." At that moment, the council understood. This was not just one ship, not just one weapon. If humans could bury something of this size on a forgotten world, then the galaxy had never seen even a fraction of their true strength. But still, fear burned into arrogance. Sereth slammed his claw against the console, forcing his failing systems to restart. He would not retreat, not in front of his crew, not in front of the galaxy. He ordered 5 destroyers forward, their weapons charging. They fired at the frigate, beams of light crossing space, but each one bent, twisted, and vanished before reaching its target, like pebbles thrown into an endless sea. The frigate remained untouched. The human officer's calm face filled the screens once more. "You do not understand what you are facing," he said. "These are not ships of war. They are shields for something far greater." Before Sereth could reply, the ground below split open with a thunderous crack. A massive section of the planet's crust tore apart, and from the darkness, the hull of the planet-sized starship rose higher. Mountains crumbled into its surface like dust, oceans of stone. Breaking against its edges, it was larger than anything alive could comprehend. Even the Council fleet looked like insects against its size. The frigate turned, almost in respect, as if greeting the awakening giant. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy felt small. Sereth gripped the railing, his pride shattering into terror. If this was only the beginning, what else did the humans hide beneath the stars? The human officer's final words carried across every ship in the fleet. They were not shouted, not loud, but heavy enough to shake hearts. "You have seen only a glimpse," he said. "When the giants rise, the galaxy will remember why humanity should never be provoked." And with that, the signal cut. The frigate hovered silently before the enormous awakening vessel. The Council fleet hung paralyzed. None dared move, none dared speak. For the first time, they understood humanity was not the weak species they thought. They were the keepers of monsters too vast for imagination. And the galaxy had just knocked on their door. The galaxy trembles word of the awakening spread like wildfire across the stars. From the trade hubs of the outer rim to the glittering palaces of the core, every being whispered the same thing. The humans had planet-sized starships buried under worlds, and now one of them was rising. On council stations, senators shouted over each other, their voices breaking with fear. On distant colonies, people stared at holoscreens, showing the image of the enormous vessel cracking free from its prison of stone. And across the war halls of empires, generals clenched their fists. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy trembled. The ship itself was still not fully free. Its dark hull glowed with faint blue lines, pulsing like veins of a living giant. Each pulse sent ripples of energy across space, shutting down ships, disrupting communications, shaking satellites from orbit. Scientists called it impossible. Priests called it divine punishment. Smugglers called it the end of everything. But humans said nothing. On Earth, the halls of power remained silent. The United Human Directorate gave no statement, sent no message, offered no explanation. It was the silence that frightened the galaxy most, because silence meant control. Silence meant humans were not surprised. Silence meant this was planned. Meanwhile, across other worlds, reports flooded in. Archaeological teams on forgotten planets found similar readings under their feet. Scanners revealed more shapes, half buried beneath crusts and oceans. Some were as big as moons, others larger than small suns. Each one carried the same human signature, and each one was waking on the council homeworld of Terraeon. Thousands gathered outside the chambers, chanting for answers. Why did humans hide this? They shouted. What do they plan? The council members argued with broken voices. Some demanded immediate war, others begged for peace. But all knew one truth. They no longer held power. Humanity had just shifted the balance of the galaxy. With a single awakening, Admiral Sereth, aboard his crippled flagship, watched in silence as the giant ship tore itself free. Its hull stretched beyond the horizon. Its engines were larger than cities. Its shadow swallowed half the planet. Every instinct told him to run, but there was nowhere to run to. The human frigate still floated before the Titan. Its captain sent no more warnings. The silence itself became the warning. The alien fleet hung frozen, caught between fear and shame. No one dared to fire again. They had seen what happened to the cruiser. They had felt the hum in their bones. They knew one mistake could erase them all. Meanwhile, in dark corners of the galaxy, old enemies of humanity stirred. Pirate lords whispered that if humans held such power, they could crush every empire with ease. Rival governments spoke of alliances, some desperate to beg humans for protection, others ready to betray them at the first chance. But everywhere, the same question echoed. Why were the ships waking now, after thousands of years? In hidden laboratories, scholars pieced together old records. They discovered faint clues about the First Galactic War, a conflict erased from official history. A war so ancient no one living remembered, a war that ended with humans vanishing into silence. Perhaps these titans were not weapons for conquest, but guardians left behind. Guardians against something else. As the galaxy trembled, so too did the hearts of ordinary people. On mining colonies, parents held their children close, staring at the sky. On merchant stations, workers abandoned their posts, praying to survive. On battle cruisers, soldiers gripped their weapons, though they knew they were useless. Everywhere, the same fear crawled into minds. What could force humans to build ships the size of planets? Back on the dead world, the awakening continued. The colossal vessel broke through the crust, lifting mountains on its hull as if they were dust. Valleys collapsed into its surface. Oceans of ash spilled like rivers. Its engines glowed faintly, brighter with each passing second, and still it did not fire, did not move, did not speak. It simply rose, a silent giant returning to life. Professor Kale, half buried under rubble at the edge of the dig site, crawled free. His 6 eyes widened. In terror and awe, he whispered into his recorder, "This is not Warcraft. This is a civilization in itself." His voice cracked. One ship like this could house billions. It could be an entire moving world. But then his tone fell into despair. If this is only the first, how many more sleep in the dark? Across the galaxy, the tremors continued. Other planets shook. Other cracks glowed with the same blue veins. The universe itself seemed to pulse with the awakening. And everyone, from the smallest smuggler to the mightiest emperor, knew one thing. The galaxy would never again laugh at humans. The tremors became stronger, spreading like ripples across the void. Stars flickered, stations shuddered, fleets drifted. Helpless, the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. For the giants were not just waking. They were calling to each other, and in that call, there was no promise of peace, only the echo of something vast. Ancient and unstoppable, the galaxy trembled, and humanity remained silent. Asterisk fear turns to chaos. The galaxy had seen wars before. It had seen empires rise and fall, fleets burn in the void, planets reduced to ash, but this was different. This was fear, raw and uncontrollable, spreading faster than light. News of the awakening reached every corner of space. On merchant docks, workers abandoned cargo to watch trembling holoscreens. On pleasure worlds, gamblers left their tables, eyes fixed on the sky. On prison moons, even killers and thieves grew. Quiet. For once, the galaxy was united not in peace, but in terror. In the grand halls of the Galactic Council, the senators screamed. One demanded immediate war against Earth, calling humans deceivers. Another begged to send envoys, to bow before humanity before it was too late. Arguments turned violent, claws and fists striking across polished floors. The guards did not stop them. Even they were afraid. Alien empires fractured overnight. Some worlds cut their trade with Earth, fearing the humans would enslave them. Others rushed to send gifts and promises, hoping to become allies. But the more they fought each other, the stronger humanity's silence became, because silence was control. In hidden channels, pirate clans whispered. They dreamed of stealing the planet ships, of carving their names into history. But their laughter always ended in silence. They had seen what one small human frigate did to a cruiser. And deep down, even the pirates knew. These ships were not for thieves. They were for gods. On the edge of the Council's territory, Admiral Sereth stood in his ruined flagship. The giant vessel still loomed beneath him, half buried but alive. Its pulse shook his bones. Its shadow drowned his courage. He wanted to retreat, to flee, and never return. But pride was poison, and pride whispered, "If humans hold this power, they will rule us all." His voice carried through the fleet. "If they awaken more, we are finished. We strike now or surrender forever." But his words met silence. No captain wanted to face the frigate again, let alone the giant. Meanwhile, on neutral colonies, riots erupted. Aliens blamed humans for hiding monsters under their feet. Shops were burned, human traders chased into alleys. Some never came out. Yet on other worlds, humans were treated like living shields. Neighbors begged them for protection. Children followed them in streets, whispering prayers as if they were holy. Chaos spread, but humans gave no speeches, no threats, no excuses. They simply watched, their silence louder than any weapon. Then came the moment that broke the galaxy. The Council dispatched a task force. 30 ships armed with the most advanced weapons. Their orders were clear: test the giant. Destroy if possible. The fleet descended to the dead world. Engines flared. Weapons locked. Voices steady with forced courage. They fired as one. Beams of plasma, missiles of iron, storms of fire. The desert split. Mountains fell. The sky turned red. When the dust cleared, the giant was untouched. Not a scratch, not a mark. The energy it gave off swallowed every strike. The Council fleet staggered in disbelief. And then the giant answered, with a soundless pulse. A shock wave spread across space. The 30 ships vanished from scanners. Their crews silenced forever. 1 second alive, the next erased. Not even wreckage remained. The Council had lost a fleet in the blink of an eye. Panic consumed the galaxy. Markets collapsed. Governments fell. Soldiers deserted their posts. Some swore humanity would conquer them within weeks. Others believed the giants would turn against Earth itself. But no one had the truth, because only humans knew the truth, and they were not speaking in secret. Chambers on Earth. Leaders watched in silence. The planet-sized vessels were not their creation, not entirely. They were built long ago, in a time no alien remembered. They had been buried not to conquer, but to wait for something darker, something coming from beyond. But the galaxy did not know this. The galaxy only saw chaos. And fear fed chaos like fire feeds on dry wood. Worlds began to burn without a single human firing a shot. Above the dead world, the frigate drifted calmly before the rising Titan. The officer's voice came once more across the void, low, steady, undeniable. "Do not mistake silence for weakness," he said. Then he cut the channel, and across the stars, chaos became the new law. The galaxy turned on itself, while the giants kept waking. Asterisk the revelation. The galaxy burned with rumors. Every world spoke of the giants. Every council chamber screamed of human betrayal. But still, humanity remained silent. That silence was heavier than war, heavier than fire, heavier than any weapon. Then one night, across the stars, a transmission leaked. It did not come from humans, but from an old archive deep in the ruins of the Orion Belt. A team of scavenger scholars broke into forgotten vaults. Inside they found fragments of data, sealed for thousands of years. When the fragments were pieced together, The galaxy saw something it was never meant to see. The screen showed records of a war, not the skirmishes the Council loved to parade, not the conquests of empires, but a war so vast, so old, that history itself had buried it. The First Galactic War. The recordings were blurred, but the truth still stabbed through. It showed fleets burning like candles against shadows larger than stars. It showed whole systems vanishing in waves of black fire. And it showed humanity not weak, not small, not reckless, but standing at the front. Billions of humans pouring into ships. Their planet-sized giants leading the charge. The enemy was never named. It was only seen as a shape, a blur, something not of this galaxy, but it was vast, endless, and hungry. And the recordings made one thing clear. Humanity had not built the planet ships to conquer. They had built them to survive. Across the galaxy, silence fell. The senators who screamed for war now trembled in their seats. The admirals who planned invasions now lowered their heads. And the citizens who rioted in fear now stared at the skies with a new terror. For if these ships were built to fight something else, and perhaps that something else was returning. Admiral Seraph watched the recordings with wide eyes. His claws dug into the metal railing until it bent. He whispered to himself, "No, no, this cannot be true." But deep in his bones he knew it was. His pride cracked, replaced with dread. If humans were preparing again, then the galaxy was already too late. On Earth, in secret halls buried under oceans, human leaders gathered. They watched the same recordings, but for them it was no revelation. They had known all along. The giants had been buried with purpose, not to hide them, but to wait for the signal that the darkness beyond the stars was stirring once more. One human general spoke, his voice steady. "They think we deceive them," he said. "But the truth is worse. They will hate us for what we hid, but when the enemy returns, they will beg us for protection." The room fell silent. Every leader knew what was at stake. They were not preparing to fight the Council. They were preparing to fight extinction. Meanwhile, the giant ship above the dead world finally rose clear of the crust. Its engines glowed like newborn suns. Its surface stretched farther than the horizon. It hovered in silence, but its presence was thunder. Every scanner in the sector screamed with impossible readings. Its energy was not measured in units. The Council understood. It was measured in fear. Then, across every channel in the galaxy, a new human message played. It was not angry, not cruel. It was calm, almost sorrowful. "We buried them after the First Galactic War." The voice said, "We swore never to wake them unless the enemy returned. Now they stir on their own. Prepare yourselves, for what comes is not us." The message shattered the galaxy. Some refused to believe it, screaming it was human trickery. Others collapsed in despair, and only a few, realized the truth. Humanity had not betrayed the galaxy. Humanity had saved it once, and perhaps they would be forced to save it again. On distant worlds, sensors began to detect faint disturbances at the edges of the galactic rim, waves of energy unlike anything seen before. Whispers spread. Maybe the enemy was already here. The stars themselves seemed colder, the void heavier, and across every system, a single thought grew louder. If the giants were waking, then it was because something worse was coming. Professor Kale, still alive, still shaken, watched the massive vessel hover above the dead planet. His 6 eyes reflected its blue glow. He whispered into his recorder, "The galaxy thinks the danger is the humans. They are wrong," he said with a trembling voice. "The danger is what made humans build these ships in the first place." The revelation spread faster than fire, and with it came a deeper fear, because if the First Galactic War was real, then the second was about to begin. Humanity's answer. The galaxy waited for humanity to speak. For days, humans said nothing, letting chaos tear across the stars. Some empires collapsed under fear. Others sharpened their fleets, but all of them watched Earth, waiting, trembling, whispering. Finally, the silence broke. On every channel, every frequency, from the smallest radio to the grandest star network, the message came. The image of a human leader appeared. A woman with silver hair and eyes sharp as steel. Behind her stood a hologram of the massive ship that had risen from the dead world, glowing like a second sun. Her voice was calm, steady, heavier than stone. "We did not unearth these ships," she said. "They are waking on their own. They were built not for conquest, but for survival. They stir now because the enemy that once tried to end us all has returned." The words froze the galaxy. For generations, humans were called reckless, weak, unpredictable. Now they stood revealed as something else entirely: guardians, keepers of a forgotten war. The senators who screamed for war fell silent. The admirals who demanded invasion lowered their heads. Because deep inside, they knew if the giants were waking, and humanity was not lying. The woman continued, her gaze unshaken. "We swore never to wake them unless there was no choice. We swore never to frighten the galaxy with their shadow. But now the void stirs at the rim, and the signal has been given. We will not seek your submission," she said. "We will not seek to rule you. But if you wish to live, you will fight beside us." Across the galaxy, the words echoed like thunder. On colony worlds, people cheered and cried at once. On pirate stations, leaders cursed as their plans shattered. On council worlds, rulers gathered in hushed meetings, weighing the impossible choice: fight with humanity or be left behind. Meanwhile, the first giant ship fully awakened. Its engines burned with light brighter than stars. Entire continents of metal unfolded from its hull, revealing towers, cannons, and shields larger than moons. It was not just a warship, it was a moving world. Billions could live inside it. Billions could march from it. The galaxy stared in awe and in terror. At the edge of known space, new tremors were detected. Sensors screamed warnings of strange distortions, ripples spreading through the void, black waves devouring starlight. Ships sent to investigate never returned. The same enemy from the first galactic war was coming again, and the giants were rising to meet it. In the council chambers, fear turned to desperation. Some demanded alliance, others whispered of betrayal. "Join the humans now," one senator cried, "or die when the enemy arrives." But old pride still poisoned many. "Better to burn," another shouted, "than kneel before Earth." The chamber fell into chaos again, but this time it was clear time was running out. Admiral Sereth stood in his quarters, staring at the stars. He had hated humanity, mocked them, feared them. Now he faced the truth. His claws trembled as he whispered, "If they had not built these giants, none of us would be alive." For the first time in his long career, Sereth felt not pride, not anger, but humility. On the dead world, the human frigate still hovered before the massive ship. The officer's face returned to alien screens. His voice carried no boast, no threat, only grim certainty. "You have feared us," he said. "You have mocked us. But the truth is simpler. We were never preparing for you." He looked directly into the lens, his eyes cold and tired. "We were preparing for them." The galaxy shivered at those words. Suddenly the fear of humanity seemed small, because if the enemy that once burned the stars was returning, then humanity's giants were not monsters. They were the last shield, and then the officer gave the final words. "Stand with us or stand aside," he said, "but do not stand against us." The transmission ended, and across the galaxy, every empire, every ruler, every soul knew. The answer had been given. Humanity would fight, and the giants would rise. The day of the giants. The galaxy held its breath. From the richest council, worlds to the poorest mining colonies, every being looked to the sky. The humans had spoken, and the giants had answered. Now the question was not if they would rise, but when. The first ship, awakened from the dead world, hung in orbit like a god. Its size dwarfed every cruiser, every station, every fleet. It blocked the sun, its shadow falling across continents. Mountains of metal lined its surface. Engines glowed with oceans of light. It was not a ship. It was a world reborn. Then came the second, on the other side of the galaxy. Beneath a frozen moon, another giant tore itself free. Ice cracked and split as the colossal vessel emerged, shaking entire systems with its pulse. Soon, a third, rising from beneath a gas giant, glowing brighter than the storms that swallowed it, and then a fourth. One by one the giants awoke. The galaxy trembled, and the enemy stirred. At the edge of the rim, black shapes appeared. Not ships, not life as the galaxy knew it, but living shadows, devouring stars, bending light. They poured from the void like endless rivers of night. They had no faces, no voices, only hunger, the same hunger that had once tried to erase everything, the hunger of the first galactic war. Panic gripped the council. Some begged to join humanity's defense. Others demanded retreat into their own orders. But there was no retreat. The shadows did not respect borders. They did not respect power. They consumed. And they came for all. On Earth, human leaders stood before their people. Their voices broadcast across every screen. "We do not fight for conquest," they said. "We fight because if we do not, no one will survive." And with those words, the giants began to move. Engines flared, brighter than suns. Gravity itself bent around their hulls. The void shook as the titans left their slumber. Formations spread across systems, each giant moving with impossible precision. They were not clumsy machines. They were living fortresses. Each step, each burn of their engines carried the weight of entire civilizations. The first clash came at the rim. The shadows poured in, endless, relentless. Smaller fleets of aliens tried to resist, but were swept away like dust. Stations crumbled. Colonies went silent. But then, the first giant fired. A beam of light erupted. From its hull, not simple energy, not plasma. It was light that bent reality. It carved through the shadows like fire through paper. For the first time, the endless dark screamed. The galaxy heard it, the sound of something older than stars. In pain, more giants fired. Each strike tore holes into the endless wave. Shadows. Shattered, collapsing into nothing. The void burned with colors never seen before. And for a moment, hope returned. On alien worlds, billions watched in awe. They saw humanity not as conquerors, not as deceivers, but as guardians. The whispers changed. They were never weak, someone said. They were waiting, said another, and across the stars, courage returned. Alien fleets that once feared humans now rallied beside them. Ships that once aimed at Earth now turned toward the rim. For the first time, the galaxy fought as one. Humans at the front, giants leading the charge. Admiral Seraph, aboard his rebuilt ship, gave the order no one thought he ever would. "Form with the humans," he said, his voice heavy. "Fight. With them or die alone." His fleet roared forward, side by side with Earth's. The old enemy now forgotten. The true enemy clear. The battle raged for days. Shadows against giants. Darkness against light. Each awakening vessel burned holes into the endless tide. But still the tide kept coming, and every being watching knew this was only the beginning. From his post on the human frigate, the officer who once warned the council spoke again. His face appeared on every screen, his eyes hard with resolve. "You have seen our giants," he said. "You have seen why they wake. This is not just humanity's war. This is the galaxy's war. Stand with us, and together we may survive." The shadows screamed again. The giants roared back, and the galaxy, for the first time in its long history, stood. United, not under banners, not under treaties, But under fear of the void, and under the guardianship of humanity, as the Titans fired, as stars shook, as the enemy raged, one truth settled across every mind. Humanity had been silent not because they were weak, but because they were preparing for this day, the day of the giants, asterisk.